Okay, cool. Great. We are live and rolling.
Okay. Where's the audience?
They're coming. They weren't able to come. Amanda's joined us. Like I said, hi Amanda. I'm trying not to be too hello. Sanaya's here. Andrew's here. They're all coming in, Walter.
Got it.
So we're good. Great. Lovely. All right. We've got a lot of people that are signed up. Just for those of you that are listening, if you've got questions, you can put them in the chat. I believe we have. Yeah, let me do this. I'm just going to allow all of you that are currently on to chat if you want to with us. We've got a lot of folks that have signed up for the recording, but they weren't able to join us this morning. So I'd prefer to have this as an interactive conversation, if that works. Why don't we give it another minute, Walter? And
Okay.
and then we can get started. How are you this morning, Amanda?
Good. How are you?
We're lovely. We're getting our acts together here.
Love that.
You know,
You got this.
Sanaya,
I say I was born
how?
in the last century, but I act as if I was born in the one before that.
Yeah.
I
When it comes to
understand.
technology, it's always difficult.
Sanaya, how are you this morning? Oh, she just went back on mute again. She's Andrew, how are you? I think we've got Andrew on as well, or at least his note taker is here. So anyway, all right. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we get kicked off, Walter?
Okay.
So that we can get into the meat of things. And oh, there's Sanaya. Good. Well, welcome to, it's been quite some time actually since we've done a webinar. But given the current state of the economy and what's going on the business landscape, I thought it was really important for us to provide to our CEO think tank community of enlightened leaders and guests some additional best practices and what shall I say, approaches to running your business well. I recently had my strategic financial conversation actually this week with Greg Crabtree, author of Simple Numbers, who told me his belief is that the next decade is going to be the era of a well-run company. And if you're not really dotting your I's and crossing your T's and paying attention to the things that need to be paid attention to, that you have a very high likelihood of going out of business. So I'm extremely grateful that Walter agreed to come and speak with us this morning. As we said in our invitation, he and I have known each other for, I think, about at least 7 or 8 years, Walter, right? Something like that, maybe 10. I don't know. I lose track. He is the founder of Ventnor Consulting, and which is one of the longest serving and best known independent turnaround companies in the US. He has worked with over 60 companies and including family owned and private equity to restore profitability and growth, has gone from retail to manufacturing to distribution to life sciences and technology. He started his career at JP Morgan Chase and then moved to Alamet Partners before going independent. He did graduate from Columbia and then went to NYU, which is one of the reasons that we are giving proceeds from this event to Columbia's College Foundation or Fund. He's married with 3 kids. I should say children because they're grown adults at this point, and he lives out in California. So with that, Walter, if you want to go ahead and start, that would be great.
Thanks so much. First of all, I want to thank you, Cheryl Beth, for the invitation. For those of you who are listening, I have known Cheryl Beth for about 8 years. I am certified in the methods that of scaling up.
Yes.
And I find it very, very interesting because scaling up is a new management technology. I wanted to become familiar with it. And the first person I met in that system was Cheryl Beth. And so I can say that with great confidence, she is one of the best in the business. I have great admiration for her management skills and for her generosity. And so thanks, Cheryl Beth, for having me today.
Absolutely.
We came on a title today, say reignite your business. 3 critical levers every entrepreneur should know. We're going to underscore the word critical because, as Cheryl Beth said, I am an expert in turnarounds. Turnarounds are when the company is at its end of its life or is in a certain amount of danger. I've helped about 60 companies turn around, and everyone knows what a turnaround means, right? When a turnaround happens, there's a sense of crisis and an expectation that anything goes. The feeling we get is that we need to cut, and we need to cut indiscriminately. Now, when I was starting my career, or almost indiscriminately, when I was starting my career, I went to a company that I was going to be actually running for a private equity firm that had run into trouble. And the woman at the front desk started to cry. I was a young-looking 30-something. She started to cry. She said, "You're too young for a hatchet man." But I'm here to tell you that we are not here to talk about indiscriminate cutting. Now, turnarounds to me are cash-constrained companies. You get into a turnaround, you call someone like me when the bank is mad at you, when the suppliers say, "I will give you your supplies if you pay for your last supplies," when the landlord is at the door saying, "I'm going to close you up, you can't make payroll," or the tax department calls and says, where's that money? It's all about cash. And so when that feeling of cash constraint, and Cheryl Beth, what is cash to a business?
Cash is oxygen,
Right.
Walter.
And if you don't have oxygen, what happens? If you don't have oxygen, what happens?
Yep, you
First thing
got
that happens is you panic
it.
and you grab your
Yes.
axe. That's the popular view of turnarounds. I'm here to tell you that's not correct. It's not correct. It's not only the popular view, it's the professional view. If you have an accountant and you show him a financial statement and it says, well, you say, I have got revenue and I have expenses and I've developed a loss. The accountant will say, well, that's very easy. Cut expenses. We're going to make the math work. And logically, it flows, right? Revenue, expenses cut. What they don't say is where. So in the examples I give, do I not pay my supplier? That would save cash, but then I don't have the product. Do I not pay my people? Do I not pay my taxes? See you in jail. So the idea of cutting expenses is not only wrong-headed at the beginning because you're panicked, but even professionals can't tell you where. And if you go into a company that is financially distressed, and the companies I work with are anywhere from 2 million in sales to 200 million in sales. Sometimes they're the most important employer in their community. Sometimes it's 3-4 generation business. The name is on the front door. So without that oxygen, with feeling constrained with oxygen, that feeling of panic, and someone says cut expenses, what does it do? It puts you in a spiral where you don't understand what to do next, and it induces panic. Here's another phrase, a phrase I use probably 500 times a week. Core products, core customers. All troubled companies have the same fault. All troubled companies have the same fault. They are not serving core products to their core customers. And it's counterintuitive. You go into a company that is expecting a hatchet man, or is cash constrained or panicking, and your first question is, who are your core customers? What are your core products? They say, well, what does that have to do with anything? I'm trying to figure out how to get my. Well, we're going to talk about your strategy. Strategy? Are you out of your mind? This is a crisis. Get that axe back over here. But in fact, core products, core customers is the guiding principle to understand how to turn the company around. And I don't believe you can shortchange it. You can't say, well, let's panic and we'll cut something for that cash purpose, and then we'll get back to strategy. All companies have the same fault, core products, core customers, it's strategy. Now, if you're looking at this slide, you see there's a map behind that phrase. And to me, core products, core customers is the essential map for understanding your business. Now, for anyone here, if I were to give you a map of your own town and say, well, the map is crumpled, or it's wet, or it's on its side, it's not oriented right, but use the map to find yourself, you would say, well, I can't. It's not the way I'm used to looking at things. But what I will tell you is core products, core customers is the map to reinvigorating a business. Once you put the map right, then everyone will go, oh, I see where I am. And it's important that we get everyone on the team, a la scaling up. The team should know about this. We're going to show a map. Now, before we go to reigniting a business, I have to give you, I have to give you just one little side note. And we're gonna talk about this, I think, a lot. What tools do you need in business? Every company that I've ever worked with, I think every company in the country, has two essential tools. Now, we all go to business school and we learn about all the other tools, but keeping with the idea of a map, we have two essential tools. The number one is your telescope. Your telescope is the customer-facing, the external-facing functions of the company. Your sales, product development, technology development, understanding trends, understanding consumer trends, understanding the IPO market for those who want to go there, understanding your competition, talking to customers and everybody else outside the four walls of the company. Very, very critical for a business to understand its business environment. The second tool is a microscope. A microscope tells you what's happening inside the four walls of the company, especially the financial condition. So, do you have organized financial statements? Do you close them monthly? Do you have a budget? Do you review your budget versus the actual and look for changes? And say, what if the budget and the actual are not meeting, what is happening? A very simple question. You need a microscope to do that. You have to have an organized function. Other microscope functions include your execution functions like deliveries or customer service or manufacturing. Okay, so in this turnaround process, we're going to talk about the two tools, and I'm going to perhaps refer back to that map, the telescope to see where we're going, the microscope where we are. What I'm going to say to you is, these are necessary. Once we've got our map, microscope is where we are, telescope is the outside environment, the map tells us where we want to go.
Hey, Walter, can I ask a question on that? Because you mentioned on the one of the key pieces, well, you sort of listed off a list. You talked about the organizational financials, you talked about closing the books monthly at a minimum, I would imagine. You talked about budget versus actual. Where does the balance sheet and cash flow forecasting fall into that
Okay, so that's
list?
that's part of your financial statement. So every financial statement is a P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. In my world, every month we update the forecast for the rest of the year to say, what are our cash needs? Forecasting cash needs is as important to a business as forecasting sales. If you have a seasonal business and you don't know when you're going to get your receivables, you don't know when you're going to pay back your bank loan. Then the bank calls up and says, oh, I'm mad at you. So to me, financial statements is a suite of financial statements.
Great.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, and by the way, by way of background, I help people plan their turnaround. Sometimes they say, okay, we have a plan. I call it the plan team financing model. You need a plan, you need a team, you need financing. I provide the plan, help them with the team. Together we get financing. That's a turnaround. Sometimes they say, oh, the plan is too hard. Can you help us with some of these execution issues? Great. And sometimes they say, no, we can't do any of this. Could you please be the CEO or CFO? And occasionally I do that. So in the companies where I'm the CEO or CFO, every month, and probably 7 days from the end of the month, I want to have a balance sheet, P&L, cash flow, KPI list that we've worked with the team, forecast for the rest of the year, given where we are actual versus budget. It's fairly involved, but it's fundamental to the microscope. If I didn't have that within days of the close of the month, then I'm operating on old information to find out where I am versus where I want to go. So how do I end up the year in the proper space unless I know where I am this past month? How do I get to my 3-year goals if I don't understand where I am this month? And by the way, preview, Cheryl Beth, I don't know if you find this. If I look at tools, the two tools of business, microscope and telescope, every business person I know is fluent in their market, their customers, their trends.
Yes. Mhm.
We talk about microscope and it's missing. And if your microscope is missing, if that knowledge of your internal operations and comparing where you are versus where you want to go is missing, you're not going to get there. It's the number one gap in scaling a company.
I'd agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if anyone
Yeah.
is here, if anyone here, if you don't, and by the way, I've done a modicum of coaching, and my coaching starts from a different place from Cheryl Beth. First thing I say is, do you have a budget? Putting together a budget is a great way to learn about your business and to learn about what you're spending and to learn about your ambitions for this year and to learn about your ambitions for next year. I use a budget as a learning tool for all of us to say, here's where we are. And a lot of times people say, oh, I didn't know I was spending that much on software. And by the way, I've always thought that entrepreneurs know their expenses. You can't cut expenses. Entrepreneurs know their expenses. There's an exception to that. This proliferation of software, there are a lot of software subscriptions that go onto a credit card or something. And when you dig down, you say, did you know you're spending software on this and software on that? So the one asterisk to entrepreneurs know their expenses and you can't cut expenses is, I think we spend a lot on software on a whim or someone sold us a business proposition that doesn't happen. So the budget sometimes finds that, but more importantly, it helps you define your ambitions and where you are versus your ambitions. It's slightly different perspective from I think some of the scaling up folks, but I like to say we're going to be grounded in the numbers from day one. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so why don't we pursue our core products and core customers? I'm going to suggest that there are 3 errors that all turnaround companies have committed. one of the three. Sometimes a lucky one commits one error in core products, core customers. An unlucky one commits two errors in mismanaging core products, core customers. And the rare but increasingly frequent, very, very, very unlucky one has three errors. The first error is strategy. They've used their telescope wrong. They're pursuing the wrong revenue, either the wrong customer or the wrong product or service. They've misunderstood their capabilities versus the market, and pure telescope problem, they have made a mistake. They should not be pursuing that revenue. The second one is, which I show here by the spreadsheet, is a measurement issue. They've got a reasonable strategy for product and service and a reasonable set of customers to go after, but they misunderstand their costs or their capabilities. And I'm going to show you an example of that and how destructive that can be. That's where your telescope is functioning fairly well, but the microscope that tells you, that should be supporting it isn't working right. Yes, the strategy is kind of working, but we don't understand our costs, so we can't compete effectively. And not understanding it means that you go weeks and weeks or months, or in some cases years, in continuing to make errors of spending too much for something that you should be course correcting on your revenue. And the third is execution. Execution errors are only inside the four walls of the company. That's when you have, oh my God, my customer service department didn't put the date when that it's due properly, so I have to ship it express mail, and it's 3 times the cost. Oh, I didn't put the right color down on the order, and I'm going to reship. Our scrap rate is high. Our customers are dissatisfied. Our staff is not trained. All of the inefficiencies and waste that and by the way, the number one reason for inefficiency and waste in a company is not that someone says, oh, well, look at all that waste happening, I'm going to live with it. Although people and CEOs, I think, are guilty of this. We see inefficiencies in the company, say, oh, I understand that, we'll get to that later. Now, the number one reason, and this can absolutely cause a turnaround, just number 3 alone, execution. Mergers and acquisitions. You buy a company, or you're an executive and the company bought another company. And you say, 2 years later, you say, well, we didn't really integrate our sales force. We really didn't integrate our factory. We didn't integrate the financial systems. We really have different payrolls. The culture is different. The compensation systems are different. The shipping from one to another, we have duplication of effort, huge inefficiencies, but wow, we really loved going to cocktail parties and telling people that we bought a company. And you've essentially opened up a wound that can take down the company unless you start addressing these things in an organized manner. So to me, the reason I wanted to talk about the 2 tools is that you see that there are 3 errors in core products, core customers, and you can the tools that you apply to them are going to differ. I'm going to go through a couple of stories.
Right. And let me just do a quick pause, Walter, in case anybody that's on the call has a clarifying question or wants to just about what you just teed up for us. So, Amanda, Sanaya, Andrew, does anybody have a question at this point? And y'all take yourselves off mute if you do.
Yes, I was about to type in the chat. Hi, this is Sanaya. I can't see myself, but hopefully you can.
Yeah.
And can you go back to the previous slide? There was the conversation around pursuing the wrong revenue.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then where might the problem be in terms of these 3? around pursuing inefficient amount of revenue,
Yeah.
right? So like you're underestimating the source or the wealth of a particular revenue stream, and that misunderstanding results in a strategic misstep, right? In terms of who's your best revenue generator.
Mhm.
So it's not necessarily the wrong revenue, it's the wrong customer or the wrong, maybe it is the wrong revenue, but that's something I'm not sure if I
So revenue,
exactly see in
revenue
how
is
you talk
product times
about
customer. To
revenue.
me, revenue is
Yeah.
product times customer. I don't know, Sanaya, whether we're talking about you're pursuing the wrong customer with the right product, or you're pursuing the right customer with the wrong product. Did I say that twice? But it's product and
Yeah,
customer, right?
yes.
It's product and customer. And
Back to the core product, core customer.
it's core products, core customers. Are you, let me put this way. No business can succeed. No business can succeed unless it is pursuing its core products and core customers. Now, in our business culture, we celebrate people who say, I was driving to the office and I had an idea that we're going to do something that was going to change the world, and we went for it. And they're waiting, they're waiting for the celebration to say, wow, what a great idea, and it's going to be a great success. And so they get to the company and they say, team, here's what we're going to do. New strategy. We're going to start going after this market. It's slightly adjacent to what we're doing now. It should be fabulous. And according to the CEO's wishes, the team pursues the revenue. 6 months later, we're not there. We're not there yet. Let's keep trying. Let's apply more marketing dollars to it. 6 months after that, we're not there. We're not there yet. We need a sales rep in that area. We really have got to commit to this. We've been here for a long time, but we've got sunk costs. We told the market what we're doing. Let's try some more. Right? So does that make sense? So pursuing the wrong revenue sometimes happens where someone has a whim, because our business culture celebrates that. It says, brilliant brilliant executives come up with ideas and jump into markets, and without study, telescopes and microscopes, that you can be very right. You can end up in the right place at the right time. And I don't understand the entrepreneurial mind. Sometimes the entrepreneurial mind does get to the right place. I'm not an entrepreneur in the sense that I could say, oh, let's have a software product and 5 years from now, it's going to be here. Some entrepreneurs do that, and I think they're fascinating cases. To me, it's a matter of study.
So
And
you're not saying to not you're not saying to pursue different types of customers or pursue having different offerings, but only after using a telescope to understand the market, a microscope to understand your internal processes, right? Like it's
Yeah.
an incident,
To me, look,
right?
I'm the cleanup guy. I come in after the decision has been the wrong decision has been made, and we can say, okay, here's your core product and core customer. And I'll give you examples of what we're talking about. By the way, another great way to pursue wrong revenue is do a merger. I'm an LED lighting company in Austin, Texas, and we bought an LED lighting company in Minneapolis. My company does strip lighting. They do track lighting. We're in Austin. They're there. We do commercial. They do industrial. But look at all the synergies. Well, maybe not. So mergers are always celebrated at the beginning, and then afterwards we go, why did we do that again? Let me give you some examples, Sanaya.
Yeah, thank you, Sanaya. That was great.
So we're going to talk about a shoe company, and I'm aware that some of these companies may be larger than the companies that of the people on this webinar, but we're talking about people who have made errors. Errors, by the way, are not character flaws. We all make errors. I study these errors and I still make them. The last company I was in, we entered we entered into a market. We studied it, didn't work. It was an error. Errors are human. We're going to show errors of larger companies that will be illustrative for companies that are even that are smaller. And you'll see that it's just these are human errors. These are mistakes that people make. A shoe company, 300 people. A printing company, second generation. Actually, it's now in the third generation. And I'm still in touch with them, very close touch with them. A restaurant chain with 60 stores. And we'll see why did they not pursue their core products and core customers? What tools were missing? What errors did they make? This is a shoe company. This is the company I mentioned earlier where this is in the days when we had receptionists. The receptionist cried and said, "You're too young to be a hatchet man." It was a company that was acquired in a private equity transaction, and it was a men's dress shoe company in very traditional market. And the new team, the acquiring team, had a vision for the company to go from traditional men's dress shoes to sleek uh, fashion loafers of the highest quality, the highest fashion sense, and change the manufacturing process, buy leather uppers overseas, stitch them into soles in the United States, and not only change the product, but change the customer, to change from traditional mom and pop stores to what at the time we saw as the most prestigious retailers in the United States, department stores. And the vision was that this new product, new market, new vision, it was going to be a great success. I got to the company when it really was cash negative, had been cash negative for a long, long time. And there had been a lot of problems. And I asked the question that led to the incredulity that we mentioned before. What's your core product? Who are your core customers? Couldn't answer the question. Turns out, as we started to look through the cash reports, with every troubled company has a daily cash report. We looked for the cash reports, and I said, what product will get us to cash positive the soonest? And a little guy raises his hand, and he said, well, we could go back to that military shoe. And people started throwing things at him and said, that ugly thing. Well, it turns out he was right. The fashion loafer that was so beautiful because of changes in manufacturing, um, uh, errors in production, errors of all types, was not making money at the product level, and they didn't have the accounting systems to tell them that. The information was there, but it hadn't been aggregated in a place where you'd say, "Aha, here's your problem." A military dress shoe that police, Marines, Army, Navy use in dress situations is not particularly attractive shoe, as you can see comparing one to the other, but it had a 35–40% gross margin. And these shoes were sold into the base exchange system. Base exchange system is typically trailers or Walmart type operations or 7-Eleven kind of stores on or near bases where you can get your military gear and sometimes you can get subsidized groceries and like. It is not an attractive retail environment. So we had an unattractive shoe and an unattractive retail environment. But the thing about the base exchange system was they were subject to U.S. procurement rules that said you have to pay your bills in 30 days. So I saw this as a pure strategy problem. Someone said, aha, beautiful shoe, beautiful customer, beautiful profits. Not so. Ugly shoe, ugly customer, beautiful profits. So it was a pure strategy. Now, as I said, there were execution issues, but for the purpose of this story, let's just say they made a strategy problem. They made a strategy mistake. And by changing the strategy within a very short period of time, within weeks, we had identified the path forward for a turnaround. And by the way, for those who think that wielding an axe is very important and people and all, the company, we didn't fire people. Doing this business was a full-time job. We simply dropped the department store customer and dropped. Now, simply, there were a lot of cash issues, and by the way, cash management is a critical skill. But cash management is just moving cash from one box to another. Your strategy for turning around the company, the fundamental issue was strategy. We could have changed cash all day long until the cash ran out. The strategy needed to change in order to have a path forward, and that was strategy.
And Walter, can you talk about, so, because this is such an applicable area of focus, right? In today's environment where we've got a lot of uncertainty, we have different, changes happening on a hourly basis. Like what are some of your like proactive, what would you encourage people to do from a proactive standpoint right now? To try and stay on top of, maybe their strategy isn't going to work anymore because of some of the changes that have occurred since January.
I think it's a good question. So here's what I would. So I said something about LED lighting before. 90% of LED lighting products are made in 3 Asian countries: China, Thailand, Vietnam. All of which are going to have. I think it's probably a mixture of a microscope and telescope. If you go to your customers, well, first you figure out your product cost. Do you know your product cost and the effect that the cost the tariff will have on your costs? And you'll have to know how much stock you have on hand. How much do you have on hand? And you go to your customers and say, we are seeing an increase in costs of this. We're considering a price increase. Will you stay with us? I think it's important. Now, when you do that, and we had this in 2000, was it 2019? There was a 25% tariff in China, and as I'm using LED because I was in that industry at the time, in that from plan to interim execution to the company that brought me to California, we talked to customers and we told them what we were going to do. We told our top, I don't know, 15 customers what the effect on us. We said, can you withstand this? Can you increase your prices? Can we do this? If we give you enough time, is that acceptable? And they all said yes. We gave them 30 days and then put out a press release. So for tariffs, it's 2 tools. First of all, you have to know what the implications are for the tariffs. So you have to know and when does it come in? We said to some folks, listen, we have 30 days on hand for this product. We have 0 days on hand for this product. We have 90 days for this product. We can layer things in and make it easier for you. And they appreciated the candor. So we had to know all of our facts and give them to them. I don't know anyone that said no. That said, over the course of, I don't know, 3 years after that, they themselves went through a microscope and telescope exercise that said, okay, with costs increasing, what's our supplier base and how do we change? And the top customers did change because they felt that they had to make some changes. Some of them went direct, but for this moment, I think you have to, you really got to have your microscope very tuned on your costs and know where you are. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful. The other piece I was going to add was just revisiting the strategy decision, right? And the tools that we have from scaling up around really clarifying, going and talking to your customers. I think Vern Harnish says when you're in trouble, or you think you're going to be in trouble, go talk to your customers. And I think Steve Blank is the one who says, because the answers are outside the building, right?
Yep.
And you talked a lot about that. You talked about
Yep.
that telescope and
Yep.
and
Microscope is
not
four
losing
walls and
sight.
telescope is outside the four walls. Yep.
Right, right.
Um,
Doing that conscientiously.
or remind me about Vern at the as we come to the end of this. I want to mention Vern again. Okay. So,
Okay.
but getting back to the errors that you can make. This is a company that simply made an error of strategy. Reversing the error brought the turnaround, showed the map forward. The second.
And so let me ask before you completely leave that example, are there additional questions from the folks? I see Carly's joined us, Amanda or Andrew or Sanaya, if you have a follow-up, and additional questions on that error of pursuing the wrong revenue? Yes, no, maybe so. All right,
I'm good on my side. Thank you.
all right, thanks. All right,
Printing company. I got into the business of turnarounds through a printing company. My father had a printing company that was in trouble, and where I looked at the P&L for, and I was a trained financial analyst from, as you said, from a Wall Street bank. I looked at the P&L for 15 months, couldn't find the expenses that said excess expenses here. And that's where I first started to understand that some products, if you sell some products, and discriminate against others, you can prosper faster. And what happened in that printing company and many printing companies and many companies that have custom manufacturing is they have problems of measurement. This is a company that had operated very, very, very large offset presses like the one you see on the left. They are really marvels of engineering, and I'm just crazy about printing. I think I really admire the people who are in that business who take blank pieces of paper and make it into essentially works of art. Now, all printing companies and maybe your company has what I call two factories. Has the factory in the front that takes the order, sells the order. Did you sell the right thing? Takes the order. Did you get the information right? Transmits the order to over the wall to the factory in the back, and the factory in the back makes it. This company had some factory in the front problems. Customer service some of them didn't understand the manufacturing process of printing very well. So if natural questions came up, it got to the press room without the question being answered. And now you're losing money. Now you're adding inefficiencies to the process. And sometimes those questions were ignored or let go so that there was some customer dissatisfaction. But the bigger problem was a measurement problem. The company had not figured out the costs of running these presses in 5 years. And so these are massive machines they need big warehouses. They carry lots of paper. You need lots of supervision. You need lots of electricity and supplies and repair and maintenance. And to not bring that to a conclusion to say this is the cost of running the press is an error. This company was so proud of their large presses, it used 5-year-old data on their costs. That it was the right product, improperly priced, because they're promoting pricing it to say we're so good, we're gonna give you 10% off. Now they were losing money at the beginning, and then they'll give 10% off on it, and then they spend money to promote it. It's a natural error. This is, I mean, and by the way, so this is what inspired me to be a cost accountant. Understanding these complex questions, very, very easy to make a mistake. So measurement issues can occur to anybody. I've worked with wholesale distributors that say, yeah, we sell gum for 25 cents. And there's only one line item on the bill of materials, gum, and they're buying it for 50 cents. Why are you selling it under the cost? So you can make a mistake. You can make a mistake on one line item. Was a cost accounting issue of great complexity. And I've worked with many heavy industrial companies where we have to work on this issue. And they made an error. The number one error is they didn't update it every 5 years. And I talk about this a lot, that they use words like allocation, which in my world is a guess. Oh, we allocated this, right? So, but it's natural. Their second product, by the way, was a vinyl printing. And by the way, when you buy a Canon printer or an HP printer and you give your zip code, they will tell you the cost of running that press. There's no measurement error here. They say, well, in your area, we estimate that the cost of running this is this. You run your job, and you price it out. You know what your margin is going to be. This company, they had a little bit of customer service issues. They had a major measurement issue. They had a core product, but their microscope wasn't telling them how much it was costing them, and that permitted them to make mistakes about what their market price should be.
Well, and again, Walter, can you speak to like the resources that folks could be using around? I mean, I know Vern is very big on pricing, because that's a big entrepreneurial mistake. Herman Simon's got a book on pricing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what are the
Okay,
resources
I'm arguing a slightly different issue.
Okay.
Um, when I go into a company, I say, what are your costs for this press? I will get a call. I get a big burly salesman comes in the doorway and says, I hear you're talking about the cost for this press. Do you understand? We're in a very competitive market and you can't raise our prices. We can't go out and do. I say, hold on. I'm talking about understanding the costs so that we can react. Your market is your market. I can go understanding your costs doesn't change your market. This company didn't understand its costs and was adding costs to it to say, oh, we're going to fool the market. We're going to give promotional pricing. Now, if you have a high cost operation and the market is changing, and I'm thinking of what market is changing now? I don't know, streaming video. I don't know anything about the streaming video world, but that market is changing. You better know your cost if you're going to be addressing that changing market, right? So the market is going to do what it's going to do, but you've got to know your costs in order to react. So to answer your question, I'd say cost is cost, and we need to know our cost so we can react. Market is market, and I don't change that. I can't affect that. But if it's going to be out there, I better know my costs. I became a cost accountant at Printing Industries of Metropolitan New York on 8th Avenue in the 1980s. And when we were talking about costing for big presses, and there were always arguments. The teacher would always get arguments about, well, do I need to know this? And I do. And he had a simple answer to it. He said, if you don't know your costs, I would love to compete with you. Right? So, but again, thanks for mentioning Vern. We're going to talk about him again. And by the way, I have a son who now works for Simon Kucher in.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So going back to the errors, what errors did they make? We described this already. Product costing. By understanding the product costing and essentially changing some of the discounts and allowances and inefficiencies that they had permitted in the operation because they didn't understand their cost. We improved the gross margin. And then we talked about the factory in the front and the factory in the back. Customer service and errors, that's only inside the four walls of the company. That was staff and errors and training and teamwork. And we had some toxic employees and all of that. Addressing that reduced costs, right? Nowhere, and by the way, this company continued to thrive. No hatchet. No one was fired. No one was fired. All strategy. Strategy.
So let me pause you there and ask if there's additional clarifying questions from the folks that we've got on today on this particular level. Any others?
I'll get a
No.
pup.
All right, we can come back around.
We can ask questions at any time. The third example I was going to give is a casual restaurant chain.
We did get a good, no questions at this point, but great insights, Walter, so keep going.
There we go. Casual restaurant chain. This was again, the company had been in desperate trouble for a long time. When I asked the staff, what is your core product? They acted as if it was kind of a marketing test on an exam. I said, oh, that's an interesting question. Probably hamburgers, because hamburgers are very popular, and we got our new half-pound hamburger. Someone said, well, Spanish foods are very popular now. We've got nachos and burritos, and we're introducing those, and big push. Very interesting, market. Someone said, well, we're going to crack the dinner world, and that's where our focus is. We're going to crack dinner. In other words, they had no clue. When in my investigation, their core product, their most profitable product that no one ever mentioned, was coffee. Plain American, to my taste, not very good coffee in a plain white mug. And by the way, I love to, when in a turnaround, I talk to everybody. I talk to everyone from the lowest temporary to the CEO, because everyone, you have to know have an X-ray vision on the company. Talking to people, what people were talking about? The problems with coffee, the problems with coffee, the problems with coffee. Turns out that in this chain, they had regional managers, and somehow the regional managers had been given the responsibility for deciding what kind of roast they would have, what kind of grind they would have, what kind of machines they would have, and there were missteps in coffee. Some of the restaurants had bun machines, and others had different kinds of machines, different sizes, different roasts. The coffee was awful. The number one source of complaint in the company was coffee. It was very interesting. Your core product, coffee, and the most complaints, and the most so the number one thing we had to do was fix the core product. Pure execution issue. But then going back to the question of what's your core product, or what's your core service, who's your core customer? There were 3 units of measure that answered the question. They had 100 stores. Many of them were unprofitable. So the customers in those locations were not core customers. We had to close many stores to bring down to the stores that had core customers, the stores that permitted us to make a living. The products that they were talking about, hamburgers and burritos and steak and onions and all the other things they were talking about, was not core. The core products from 1 to maybe 15 were all breakfast items. And So that's the second unit of measure. And the third unit of measure was day part. They were busy, busy, busy from 6:30 in the morning to 1:30 in the afternoon. And many of the stores had very few customers after 3. And so they were unprofitable in those hours. So how do we get defining core product and core customer was involved making sure that we were addressing all of those units of measure. What are our customers, so that we could address the profitability issues and bring the company around. So coffee in the first instance, both a strategy and an execution issue, and then core product, understanding the core product, and core customer by location, product, SKU, and day part. This was strategy and execution. Everything was measured properly. They knew their costs. They really hadn't looked at them to say, okay, what business should I be in? They continued to make mistakes, errors, to say, I really want to crack that dinner market. Well, you know what? When you're cash constrained, you're not cracking the dinner market. When you're cash constrained, you're going to go back to your core. So strategy was restaurant closings to make sure that we were offering to core customers, change the product offering to stop selling all of the fancy new. I mean, this is a company whose logo was mom's front porch. Who's going to buy a burrito off of mom's front porch? Stop all that nonsense, and then fix coffee. The marketing, remember I said, what are your core products? Who are your core customers? They said, well, we're marketing dinner and we're marketing. They were spending a lot of money on marketing to try to get into that new business, to try to do stuff. We changed the marketing focus. This is one where I can't say that people didn't lose their jobs. The people who worked in those stores lost their jobs. But you can see in 2 out of 3, these were really companies that needed a refocus and I don't want to use the word re-engineering, but movement towards core products and core customers. It's not the hatchet that everyone thinks of at the beginning. So now we come to the point of your businesses.
Well, and Walter, can you just go back just for a minute so we can take a question or two if we
Yes,
need
go ahead.
to? So just the one piece, was it because they didn't have the right folks in the financial seats analyzing this? Was it because they just hadn't taken the time to do it? Like, can you speak to like what were the things?
Yeah, I mean, look, many people use financial statements as, how did I do last month? I've got to get that done. They weren't using it as the microscope into the jumping off point to where do I have to go? So they had they had financial statements, but and often, Charlbeth, the companies, when you have a strong CEO or a management team that's very well aligned on the mission, you're missing some skills. They weren't looking at the map. I don't know that they really had a map. They were thinking in terms of, I come from the restaurant industry. Restaurant industry has a lot of new offerings. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of customer surveys out there. There's a lot of customer data. All the restaurant magazines talk about new concept. So their industry told them they've got to have new concepts. And all of that culture kind of overwhelmed what a financial analyst would have found in 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a strong, very, very strong CEO. We're going to grow this business and we're going to crack this market, and the trends are here. The telescope was operating perfectly. What they didn't come back to was, sure, burrito. A lot of people are eating burritos. Are you sure that's for you? Right? So I guess, so a lot of things I've learned is that and by the way, I don't come in here and say, hey, I'm the answer man. Here's the answer. What I learned when I was helping my own family business, when I told my father, whose business I was helping and that started my career, this product is losing money. We have to stop it. He didn't say, oh, thank you very much. That's a great insight. Um, we'll turn the company around. He was angry. He said, I've got customers who depend on that. Now what do I do? And so one of the things what you have to understand is in the turnaround world, for me, a turnaround in family businesses or small companies owned by small institutions, you don't come and say, here's the answer. Please give me my check and you go implement. Sometimes you have to negotiate and present the ideas in a way that people can understand it, because there are strong personalities that got you there, and there are strong personalities that are going to be there when you've left. You've got a smooth, what's a smush, or what's the word I'm looking for, right? You gotta kind of
You gotta smooth the waters. Is that
yeah,
what
you gotta you gotta negotiate a little bit. You got to get to the right answer, and you can't wait too long a time. But sometimes you make a mistake because strong personalities said that. You've got to present the answers to the strong personality in a way that they can see the proper way going forward. And by the way, and another way of doing that is to say, oh, and by the way, how much cash do you have? You want to continue to sell burritos? Okay, open up your wallet, get a budget for burritos, and we'll sell burritos. Right now, you don't have money for burritos. You have money for eggs.
Yeah. So like just on this particular example, I'm turning back to the audience. Any questions at all for you all, from you all on this? Yes, no, maybe so.
We'll have time. We're coming towards the end of my formal talk. I wanted to, and this may be a time, Sherbeth, where you could facilitate some of the insights, the three levers that we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
This is your P&L. Here's my question for your audience. Do you know your core products?
Hmm.
Do you sell them, or services? Do you sell them to core customers? Are you really certain of your strategy? Or have errors crept into that decision making? Are you trying to crack the burrito market, or trying to promote products that others do better, or continuing to offer products uh, that you tried a few years ago and you haven't really fixed, or you acquired a business? Are you selling core products to core customers? That is the number one way to reignite a business. Because by the way, you're probably selling, every business is probably selling something at a loss. And we live through that for a while because we say, well, I'm going to fix that later. Well, you can reignite your business by fixing it now. Number two way to reignite your business is use your microscope. We talked about this before. Entrepreneurs are they love to use their superpower of peering into the future, peering into customer needs, understanding um, uh, trends, and and producing a product that is going to be just right for that market. But what do you know about how you're executing inside the four walls of the company, especially your cash cash needs, your cash forecasts, your monthly sales numbers, or your monthly financial statements will tell you your sales versus budget. And to me, a budget is a promise we make to ourselves. Did we keep our promises? Did we make that? If not, why not? You need a microscope to say, am I keeping my promises? You look at your cost of sales. Did we reduce our costs in the way that we expected? Did we reduce errors in production in the way we expected to serve our customers? If not, why not? So it's a very important. I don't use a financial statement to say, oh, look, last month we hit a number the number X, that's the past, that's dead. The question is, can I get some information that's timely? Say, look, this is what's currently happening. We are not meeting our numbers because of X, Y, or Z. What do we do about it? You reignite your business by knowing your numbers and saying, what are we going to do about it?
So we did have a question about, went back to your negotiation, and you were talking about negotiating with the owner, and I mean, in that case, it was your father, right?
Yeah.
But what happens in like so we have not-for-profits, right? And we're in the not-for-profit world where sometimes you're getting direction from a board. Is there a way of going about that negotiation based on your
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
experience? Like
yeah.
if the incorrect strategy is coming from the board?
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes, a board of directors is a good news, bad news situation. Board of directors, they give their name. Sometimes they give donations. Sometimes they open doors. Sometimes they are very, very studious of the issues inside the company. Sometimes they give their name because they like your name and they find it prestigious. Sometimes they give their time, but it's not that much time. They give their study, but they read the piece in bed the night before the board meeting, and sometimes they just haven't done anything. And the answer to what I find in boards of directors of all stripes is you show the facts and you marshal your argument. In a non-profit board, especially where they may not lose money if you make a mistake, you remind them of their fiduciary duty. They have a duty to study the facts and operate in the best interests of the organization, the grantors, of the government, of the employees, etc. It's a tough nut, but you don't do it by saying, I think we should go here, and they say, well, I'm on the board and I think we should go here. You're going to lose. The only way to win in a board, the negotiation happens by marshaling your facts, knowing your numbers. And by the way, I've done core product, core customers for YWCA organizations, not-for-profits educational nonprofits, universities and colleges. Just because you're not-for-profit doesn't mean you have a core product and core customer.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes people use the language of not-for-profit, of service and community and needs to paper over the capabilities of the organization versus what they're trying to serve. It's a very, to me, that's a toxic language. Go back to the core product and core customers. You can address community, you can address needs, you can address service with your core products and your core customers. If someone says, we've got to serve the community with burritos, you've got to have an answer to say, yeah, but this is why that's not right for this community. We are not in the burrito business. People don't naturally come here for that product. If you're interested in that, I think that's a different organization. And it's tough because they think they're on the board and they think they have a certain amount of power, which they might. But if you have the power of understanding the argument that I'm making using the microscope, you will win. Because it's not, and by the way, it's not a matter of winning or losing, but it's a matter of finding the right path, right? That map. If you have someone says, well, I want to go here on the map and I want to go there on the map and I'm on the board, so I think we should go over here. No. Let's get our map out. This is the map. It's not a personal question. This is our capabilities. This is what the telescope tells us. This is what the microscope tells us. What are our core products and core customers?
Yeah, it occurs to me, Walter, that these are actually really good questions that CEOs and entrepreneurs and business owners can not just ask themselves, but go to their team with, right? Have people actually sit and and quietly, right? Like, write down, like, I want everybody around the table to write down, what do you think our core product is? What do you think who do you think our core customer is? What are we currently using a microscope on? And
Yeah.
who's actually doing that? Like, it's a very good checklist,
Yeah. Well,
right?
yeah. It's so interesting you say checklist. So the book that I hope is going to come out in October is
Yeah, there you
4
go.
turnaround strategies. And it's a checklist for consultants and coaches. So core turnaround strategies is core products from core customers, execution issues, measurement issues. That's the checklist. Plus I add 3 things on it that I mentioned very briefly earlier. The plan, team, financing. Every turnaround needs a plan. Every turnaround needs a team. Every turnaround needs financing. So does every scale up, right? You need a plan, team, financing. So I've got 6 items on a checklist, which is, do we have the right strategy? Do we have the right measurement? Do we have the right execution? Plan, team, financing. And I've written a book that's oriented towards consultants and coaches because they have the time and the persistence to go after these issues. I think you do need a checklist for every company. And I think using the word turnaround should not dissuade anyone from working with any company on it.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
when people say, I don't like the word turnaround. I say, well, that's interesting. It's about, let's call, if I said performance improvement, would it be better? Probably, right? But here's the thing. Here's the thing. If a coach comes in to a basketball team and she says, I'm your new coach, and does not lay down the vision for improving things dramatically, she's not going to get dramatic results. So she might say, I'm here to turn around. We are going to turn this team around. What's the turnaround going to consist of? Recruiting. We're going to recruit differently and different places. Conditioning. We're going to have better conditioning. Plans and tactics, practice, coaching staff. 5 things that we're going to change, and we're going to turn around this team. If you don't declare your impression, your intention to change an organization, you will not get there. So the book is Core Turnaround Strategies, a checklist for consultants and coaches. Consultants and coaches are the people who can say, these are the 5 things we need, or 6 or 3. It's very
And when are you anticipating the books coming out, by the way?
October or November. And
Okay.
by the way, I just sent a copy to Vern. I mentioned Vern. So
Yay.
to me, scaling up was, I mentioned 5 books that were key to my intellectual development as a manager. And the last is Scaling Up. Scaling Up is a remarkable piece of management technology. It talks about opening your information to the team, using the data of the team, using the accountability of the team, using the periodicity of that strategy meeting to say, how do we do? Right? If what did, just like I said for budget versus actual, scaling up teaches you every quarter what was our intent and how did we do, and what's our course correction. It's a remarkable piece of management technology, and it really reinforced in my world when I go into a company and we say we're going to do a turnaround. In the old days, it used to be, oh, it's a turnaround. It's a secret. We can't tell anyone. I said, a secret? Everyone in the company knows what's going on but you, right? We can't be pretending that we're not in crisis. So using some of the techniques of scaling up it really gave me confidence to get more and more and more of the team involved.
Right. Right. Well, let me just, again, pause again. So Amanda did share that when you were talking about costs before, the costs alone for those products that aren't your core and aren't selling should be reason enough to remove them. So stating just as reinforcement, to your.
I'm sorry, is that, I didn't understand. Is that a question?
No, she just made a comment that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted to,
yeah.
right, that I wanted to share with you.
Yeah.
Are there additional questions and or thoughts and reactions from the folks that we have here live with us on what we've just been chatting about for the last, I don't know, 15 minutes or so as well? Andrew or Amanda or Sanaye? Let's check.
Okay.
Yes,
I
no,
want to show you something, Charlbeth.
yes.
Every slide in this presentation, I don't know if you've noticed, every slide has had a tugboat on it. And tugboat is my logo. This actually is the view I had from my home in Brooklyn, New York for many years. I had a view of the harbor. And I became fascinated with tugboats. Tugboats were not fancy, um, not prestigious, but they're always busy and kind of unfussy. And you see them going through the harbor just doing their work. And you know, a lot of consulting companies have these elegant sailboats as their logos that, you know, harnessing the power of wind and crossing continents and continents. That's not my logo. My logo is a tugboat. And because a tugboat is an expert in a small area, and it helps big ships or ships of all types get to where they need to go, and then they go on to do the next job. So I put on the back of my business card that picture that you have here. And when people turn over the business card, they say, "Why do you have a tugboat on your business card?" And I say, "That's what I do. I push." Now, tugboats aren't very pretty. I hope if this presentation has reflected my having been born in the last century and probably should have been born in the one prior, it's a tugboat presentation. I hope it provides the push.
Yay. Well, you did, I did ask if anyone has any additional questions to raise their hand. But you did mention that Scaling Up was one of the 5 books
Yeah,
that have influenced you most. Can you
Yeah.
share with us the other 4?
sure. So David Ogilvy, Confessions of an Advertising Man. To see if I can get all 5. David Ogilvy, Confessions of an Advertising Man. One of the things he said was, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I wanted to be indispensable. So I said, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I wanted to be indispensable. Edwards Deming, he was the statistician who developed the quality initiative, and he was really he was against management blaming people when you can blame process.
80% of the problem is the process, only 20% is
W.
people.
Edwards Deming, right?
That's it, that's
Coming out of the
it.
crisis. Peter Drucker, the entrepreneurial economy. Sri Kumar Rao, who's a very good friend of mine and a friend of Vern's, by the way. Sri Kumar Rao wrote, Are You Ready to Succeed? It's the only book in my list that has nothing to do with business. He doesn't talk about balance sheet or P&L or cash or market, even though he was a marketing professor at Columbia. He talks about your mental state and your mental chatter and how ready you are to prepare yourself for life and making sure that your expectations are in line with what you're about to achieve. Life changing. And then last, Vern Harnish, Scaling Up.
Right.
And by the way, both of them, Vern is reading. I think he's on a plane now, reading the manuscript. I hope to get his
Good.
endorsement. And if he doesn't, I'm going to sick you on him.
And see if I can have any influence.
But it, you know, my admiration is real, and Sri Kumar is going to do the same. Unfortunately, Messrs. Ogilvy, Drucker, and Deming are not available to offer a blurb.
No. Is there a Drucker book that you mentioned that I missed? What was
Managing in Turbulent Times.
Managing Interview? Okay, there's a good read for
Yep.
today.
And by the way, you know, one of the interesting things about as you reread that, and you know, I went to business school. I met my wife in business school. We talk about business probably a few hours a day. So there's always business, financial markets, strategy, and have been, you know, I've got a business library as well as a personal library. One of the things that Drucker brought to my attention as I reread that was about 30 years ago, we started the idea of a firm in the United States was you've got to maximize value for shareholders. And it almost gave a free value, a free pass card to people who said, well, I'm not doing a very good job in X, Y, or Z, but I'm giving value to shareholders. And Drucker makes a compelling argument that businesses are an important part of our society and they serve employees and suppliers and communities
And
and
community.
government.
The
And
five,
we're
the
all in
five
this,
star, yes.
we're all in this together.
Yes.
And the value of the firm that we only serve shareholders and behavior is okay because it serves the shareholder, I think is worth a read in and of itself.
Yeah, yeah. Procter and Gamble had that philosophy of they used to call it five-sided responsibility. It was
Yeah.
not just to the shareholders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's one of our most important business thinkers who before before that theory came out in a Harvard Business Review article in the late 80s was arguing forcefully for more responsibility in our companies. And part of our turbulent times, I think, right now is that we've lost some of the cohesion that companies can provide to suppliers and communities and employees.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree. So can I just do a quick poll from Amanda and Sanaya specifically, because you guys have been great in terms of asking questions and adding commentary. What's one takeaway? You know, I'm gonna ask this question. You're probably grinning. Amanda or Sanaya, would you mind sharing?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think for me, it's the frequency of checking, you know, what's selling and the frequency of costing them out to just make sure that we're hitting the profitability that's needed.
Great. Thank you.
For me is asking everyone, right? Not just the C-suite about core product, core service, all of the things that seemingly are going well and both not well, right? And not just asking someone who's pouring the coffee, but also the folks who are
Yeah.
sitting in the ivory tower.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Walter, very much. My takeaway is I'm gonna go back and look at Drucker's managing in turbulent times.
Yeah. Yeah.
An oldie but a goodie.
Good. Good.
Anyway,
Let
thank
me
you
know if I can
so
help.
much for joining us today.
My
I
pleasure.
really
Thank you for having me.
absolutely
Looking
deeply
forward to talking
appreciate
again.
you.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
All right,
Walter.
thanks all.
Bye-bye all.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.